A bride walked into his barn covered in blood, whispered, "Don't let them find me." The arrival. The October wind carried the scent of dying leaves across Luke Harper's property, a sprawling 40 acres of Tennessee farmland that had been in his family for 3 generations. At 52, Luke had grown accustomed to the solitude that enveloped his life like morning fog since Martha's passing 5 years ago. The cancer had taken her quickly, mercifully some said, though Luke found no mercy in the empty spaces she left behind. That Thursday afternoon started like any other. He'd spent the morning repairing a section of fence the neighbor's bull had damaged, his hands working automatically while his mind wandered through memories. The sun was beginning its descent when he heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold. The horses were screaming, not the usual whinnies or snorts of displeasure, but genuine sounds of terror that sent Luke racing toward the barn, his work boots kicking up dust clouds in his wake. His hand instinctively went to the old Remington shotgun mounted just inside the barn door as he burst through the entrance. What he saw made him freeze mid-stride. There, huddled in the far corner between hay bales and the old tractor he kept meaning to fix, was a woman in a wedding dress. But this was no blushing bride. The once white gown was soaked in blood. So much blood that Luke's first thought was that she must be dying. The crimson had spread across the bodice, down the full skirt, even spattering the delicate lace sleeves. Her veil hung askew, torn and tangled in hair that might have been blonde beneath all the red. She was young, couldn't be more than 25, with the kind of delicate features that belonged in magazine ads, not blood-soaked in a stranger's barn. When she saw him, she pressed herself further into the corner, raising one trembling hand as if to ward him off. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the still agitated horses. "Please don't let them find me." Luke lowered the shotgun, his mind racing. "Miss, you're hurt. Let me call." "No." The word came out as a desperate sob. "No calls. No police. No hospitals. They'll find me. They'll take me back." "Back where? Who's after you?" Luke took a cautious step forward, noting how she flinched. "That's a lot of blood. You need help." She looked down at herself as if seeing the blood for the first time, and a bitter laugh escaped her lips. "It's not mine." Her green eyes met his, and Luke saw something there that chilled him more than the blood. Pure, unadulterated terror mixed with a grief so profound it was almost palpable. "Most of it isn't mine." Luke set the shotgun aside and held up both hands, trying to appear non-threatening. Okay, let's start simple. I'm Luke Harper. This is my farm. You're safe here for now. What's your name?" She hesitated, biting her lower lip hard enough to draw fresh blood. "Sarah. Sarah Chun." The name didn't match her appearance. She looked as white as the dress had probably been that morning, but Luke filed that observation away. "All right, Sarah, how about you come into the house? You can clean up, and we can figure out." "No." She shook her head violently. "They might be watching the house. They won't think to check the barn, not right away. Please, I need somewhere to hide. This is only for tonight. I promise to disappear tomorrow. You'll never see me again." Luke studied her carefully. Everything about her smacked of trouble, the kind of trouble a wise man would avoid by calling the sheriff and clearing his hands of the entire mess. But there was something about the way she held herself, broken but not defeated, that reminded him painfully of Martha in those final days. She persevered in the face of apparent defeat. "There's a loft," he heard himself saying, "above the horse stalls. It's dry. There's some old blankets up there. But you gotta tell me something. Whose blood is this? Did you hurt someone?" Sarah's face crumpled. "I didn't mean to. God, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was supposed to be my wedding day. I was supposed to be Mrs. Victoria Castellane by now, sipping champagne at the country club." She laughed again, that same bitter sound. "But I couldn't do it. When I tried to leave, when I said no at the altar..." She pressed her hands to her face, smearing blood across her cheeks. "Marcus tried to stop me. And then Diana. Oh God, Diana. Who's Diana?" "My sister. My maid of honor. She tried to help me leave and tried to get between Marcus and me when he grabbed me. He pushed her. She fell down the church steps. Her head..." Sarah's voice broke entirely. There was so much blood. "I tried to help her, But Marcus's father, Judge Castellane, had his men there. Private security, he called them. They wouldn't let me near her. They were going to drag me back inside and make me finish this ceremony. I ran. I just ran. Luke felt his stomach turn. The Castellane name was well known even out here in the rural parts. Old money, old power, the kind of family that had judges and senators on speed dial. If Sarah had run from a Castellane wedding, Jesus Christ, he muttered, "You picked one hell of a family to run from." "I didn't pick them," Sarah said fiercely. "They picked me." Marcus saw me at a charity gala 6 months ago. I was there with my employer. I was a curator at the Morrison Gallery. He decided he wanted me, and Marcus Castellane always gets what he wants. Her voice turned bitter. Even if he has to destroy your life to do it. Even if he has to threaten your family. The distant sound of engines made them both freeze. Luke moved to the barn door, peering out through a crack. 3 black SUVs were moving slowly down the main road, clearly searching. "Loft. Now," he ordered, surprised by the authority in his own voice. Sarah didn't argue, gathering her ruined skirts and following him to the wooden ladder. She climbed awkwardly, the dress making every movement difficult. Luke grabbed an old tarp and quickly covered the blood spots on the barn floor, then scattered some hay over it. It wouldn't fool a close inspection, but it might buy them time. By the time the vehicles reached his driveway, Luke was sitting on his porch, cleaning his rifle with practiced movements. He didn't look up when 2 men in dark suits got out and approached. "Evening," one of them said. He was tall, built like a linebacker, with the kind of flat eyes that had seen too much violence. "We're looking for someone. A woman, young and blonde. She might be confused or disoriented. Have you seen anyone like that?" Luke continued cleaning his rifle, taking his time before answering. "Can't say I have. Don't get many visitors out here." The second man, shorter but no less intimidating, stepped forward. "She's dangerous. Hurt someone at her wedding. Her family's really worried about her. There's a reward for information leading to her safe return." "Is that so?" Luke finally looked up, meeting their eyes steadily. "Well, I'll keep an eye out. What did you say her name was?" "We didn't," the tall one said. "But it's Sarah. Sarah Chun, though she might use another name. She's confused." Luke nodded slowly. "I'll let you know if I see anything. You boys have a card or something." They exchanged glances, and the shorter one pulled out a business card. It was blank except for a phone number. "Call this number if you see or hear anything. Anytime, day or night. The family's very concerned about her safety." "I'm sure they are," Luke said dryly. After they left, Luke waited a full hour before returning to the barn. He found Sarah curled up in the loft, wrapped in a moth-eaten blanket, shaking despite the relative warmth of the evening. "They're gone," he said quietly, "but they'll be back. This is the only farm for miles, and that blood trail you left won't take long to find." Sarah nodded, her face pale beneath the smeared blood. "I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come here. I put you in danger." Luke climbed up to sit across from her, studying her face in the dim light filtering through the loft window. "You want to tell me the real story? Because what you gave me before was true, but it wasn't complete. Nobody runs like you're running over a pushed sister and a refused wedding." Sarah was quiet for so long Luke thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. 3 months ago, my father disappeared. He was a journalist investigating connections between the Castellane family and human trafficking operations along the border. One day he was there, the next he was gone. The police said he probably ran off, maybe at another family somewhere. But I knew better. She pulled the blanket tighter. Then Marcus showed up, charming, persistent, wouldn't take no for an answer. I was flattered at first. Who wouldn't be? He's handsome, rich, and connected. But then things got strange. He knew things about me, about my family, that he shouldn't have known. And he kept mentioning my father, these little comments about how accidents happen and how family is so important. He was threatening you. Not directly. Never directly. The Castellanes are too smart for that. But I understood. Marry Marcus, become part of the family, and maybe my father stays safe wherever they're keeping him. Refuse. She shrugged. I try to play along, try to find evidence, but I'm not a detective. I'm just an art curator who got in over her head. So what changed today? Diana figured it out. My sister, She's always been the smart one. She found something in Marcus's study during the rehearsal dinner. Photos of my father. Recent photos. He's alive, but... Her voice broke. He looked bad. Really bad. She wanted to go to the FBI, but I knew we'd never make it. So I thought if I could just get through the ceremony and become Mrs. Castellane, maybe I could find him from the inside. But you couldn't do it. When the priest asked if anyone objected, Diana stood up. She was going to tell everyone right there in the church. I saw Judge Castellane signal his men. I knew what was going to happen. So I objected first, said I couldn't go through with it. Marcus grabbed me, and Diana tried to intervene. She closed her eyes. The rest you know. Luke ran a hand through his graying hair. He'd wanted a quiet life after Martha died. Simple days, hard work, no complications. Sarah Chun was a complication of the highest order. We need to get you somewhere safe, he said finally. Somewhere the Castellanes can't reach. There's nowhere they can't reach, Sarah said hopelessly. They own judges, police, and politicians. They have money and power and absolutely no conscience. Maybe, but they don't own everyone. Luke made a decision that would change both their lives. You're going to stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out next steps. But first, we need to do something about all that blood. And we need to be smarter about hiding you than just tossing you in a loft. He climbed down and returned with a bucket of water, some rags, and a change of clothes that Martha had never been able to donate. Clean up as best you can. There's an old root cellar beneath the barn that nobody knows about except me. Hasn't been used in 20 years. You'll be safe there. As Sarah began to clean the blood from her hands and face, Luke found himself thinking about Martha again, about how she'd always said he was too quick to trust, too willing to help strangers. But she'd also said that was what she loved about him. Why? Sarah asked suddenly. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. For all you know, everything I've told you is a lie. Luke considered the question. Maybe it is. Maybe you're a killer, and I'm a fool. But I don't think so. I've seen fear before, real fear. And I've seen what powerful men do to people who can't fight back. If you're telling the truth, then sending you back to them would be like sending a lamb to slaughter. I couldn't live with that. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I know that's not enough, but thank you. Don't thank me yet, Luke said grimly. If the Castellanes are half as dangerous as you say, we're both going to need a lot more than gratitude to get through this. As he helped her down to the hidden root cellar, Luke couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet, solitary life had just come to an abrupt end. Outside, the October wind picked up, rattling the barn doors like something trying to get in. Or maybe, he thought, like something trying to warn him of what was coming. The hunt. Luke hadn't slept more than 2 hours straight in the 3 days since Sarah Chun had stumbled into his barn. Every creak of the old farmhouse, every distant engine sound, sent him reaching for the loaded shotgun he now kept beside his bed. The Castellane men had returned twice more, each time with more questions and thinly veiled threats. He found himself rising before dawn, as was his habit, but now his morning routine included checking the root cellar. Sarah would be awake, sitting in the circle of light from the battery-powered lantern he'd given her, usually reading one of Martha's old books. The wedding dress had been burned in the old oil drum behind the barn. Too risky to keep evidence like that around. Morning, he said quietly, passing down a thermos of coffee and a plate of eggs and toast. Sleep at all? Some, Sarah replied, though the dark circles under her eyes suggested otherwise. In Martha's jeans and flannel shirt, she looked younger, more vulnerable. I heard vehicles around 3 a.m. Probably just the Hendersons coming back from the casino, Luke said, though he'd heard them too and knew the Hendersons' old truck didn't sound anything like those SUVs. Any word from your contact? Sarah had revealed on the second day that she had a friend in the FBI, someone her father had trusted before his disappearance. She'd been trying to reach him through a burner phone Luke had bought, but so far, nothing. Left another message, she said, frustration evident in her voice. Jack's probably in deep cover somewhere. He does that sometimes. Worst timing ever. Luke sat on an overturned crate, studying her. We need to talk about what happens if he doesn't surface soon. You can't live in this cellar forever. I know. Sarah wrapped her hands around the coffee thermos. I've been thinking. There's a place my father mentioned once, a cabin in the Ozarks. He said if anything ever happened, if we needed to disappear. She trailed off, but I don't even know if it really exists. He was paranoid sometimes and saw conspiracies everywhere. Turns out he was right about the Castellanes, but the cabin might have been just another fantasy. We're checking out, Luke said. Better than sitting here waiting for them to. The sound of multiple vehicles approaching fast cut him off. Not the slow, search and crawl of the previous visits. This was urgent, aggressive. Stay here, Luke ordered, already moving toward the ladder. No matter what you hear, stay hidden. He emerged from a barn to find his property swarming with vehicles. Not just the black SUVs, but also county sheriff cars. His heart sank as Sheriff Ray Dalton stepped out, accompanied by the two men who had visited before and a third man. Luke recognized, with a chill, Marcus Castellane himself. Marcus was everything you'd expect from old money. Tall, conventionally handsome, with perfectly styled dark hair and a suit that probably cost more than Luke's truck. But it was his eyes that made Luke's hand itch for a shotgun. Cold, calculating, with a possessive fury barely held in check. "Mr. Harper," Sheriff Dalton said, not quite meeting Luke's eyes. Ray was a good man, or had been once. But good men could be bought or threatened like anyone else. "We have a warrant to search your property." "On what grounds?" Luke demanded, though he kept his voice calm. "We have reason to believe you're harboring a fugitive," Marcus interrupted, stepping forward. "My fiancée. She's very ill, Mr. Harper. She needs help." Funny way of showing concern. "Bringing half the county out here," Luke observed. "And I told your boys already I haven't seen any young woman." Marcus smiled, but didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, they mentioned you were uncooperative. But you see, we found something interesting. Blood trails leading toward your property. And a piece of lace caught on your fence line that matches my fiancé's wedding dress." Luke's mind raced. He'd been careful, but apparently not careful enough. "Could have blown in from anywhere," he said. "That's if it's even from a wedding dress. There's lots of white fabric in the world." Indeed, Marcus's smile widened, which is why we need a search, to rule out any misunderstandings. "You don't mind, do you? Unless you have something to hide?" Sheriff Dalton cleared his throat. "Luke, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're going to search with or without your permission. The warrant is legal." Luke knew when he was beat. Fighting now would only make things worse. "Fine, but I want to see that warrant first. And any damage to my property gets paid for." As Dalton handed over the paperwork, Marcus leaned in close. "She's mine," he said quietly, so only Luke could hear. "Sarah belongs to me, and I always collect what's mine. You do well to remember that, farmer." The threat in his voice was unmistakable, but Luke had faced down Martha's cancer. After that, pretty boys with money didn't scare him much. "Last I checked, slavery was abolished," Luke replied just as quietly. "Nobody belongs to anybody." Marcus's face darkened, but before he could respond, his men were already spreading out across the property. Luke watched helplessly as they entered his house, his barn, and even the old smokehouse. They were thorough, professional, and careful not to actually damage anything, which somehow made it worse. This wasn't rage, it was calculated pressure. The search took 3 hours. Luke spent the time sitting on his porch, seemingly calm, though his heart hammered every time someone went near the barn. The root cellar was well hidden, its entrance covered by an old workbench and decades of accumulated farm equipment. But if they moved the right things... "Mr. Harper," one of the suited men approached. "There's fresh ash in your burn barrel. Mind telling us what you burned?" "Trash," Luke said flatly. "Old bills, some newspapers." "Is that a crime now?" The man's expression said he didn't believe it, but ash was ash. Without the dress itself, they had nothing. Finally, Sheriff Dalton approached, looking embarrassed. "We didn't find anything, Luke. Sorry about the intrusion." "No, you're not," Luke said, not bothering to hide his disgust. "But you did your job, Ray. Hope it was worth it." Dalton flinched, but said nothing. As the convoy prepared to leave, Marcus approached one last time. "This isn't over," he said conversationally. "I know she's been here. I can smell her perfume. Lilacs. She always wore lilac perfume. Did you know that, Mr. Harper?" Did you notice it about my fiancée when you were hiding her? Luke said nothing, just met his stare steadily. Marcus continued, I'm a patient man. I can wait. But Sarah, she's not strong. She needs her medication. Did she tell you about that? About the pills she has to take? Without them, well, he shrugged. Things get difficult for her. Hallucinations, paranoia, violent episodes. It's sad, really. Her father had the same condition. Hereditary psychosis. It's why we're so worried about her. Funny, Luke said. She seemed pretty lucid to me. You know, hypothetically speaking, if I'd seen her. Marcus's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Enjoy your solitude, Mr. Harper, however long it lasts. After they left, Luke waited another full hour before returning to the cellar. He found Sarah pressed against the far wall, tears streaming down her face. I heard him, she whispered, about the medication, about my father. It's all lies. I don't take any medication. My father wasn't psychotic. But that's what they'll tell everyone, isn't it? That I'm crazy. That I need to be locked up for my own good. Easy, Luke said gently. They're gone. You're safe. For now. Sarah wiped her eyes. But he's right. He is patient, and he has all the resources. We can't keep this up. Luke made a decision. Then we don't. Tonight, we leave. We'll find that cabin your father mentioned. It's better than sitting here waiting for them to come back with a better warrant. You can't come with me, Sarah protested. This is your home, your life. My life ended when Martha died, Luke said quietly. This is just existence. Maybe it's time I remembered the difference. That evening, as Luke packed supplies and prepared his truck, he thought about the strange turns life could take. A week ago, his biggest concern had been fixing that fence. Now he was preparing to go on the run with a woman he barely knew, chased by powers he couldn't fully comprehend. He loaded the truck carefully with camping supplies, non-perishable food, and cash he'd been saving for a new tractor. In the house, he paused at the mantel, looking at Martha's picture. I know this is crazy, he said softly, but I think you'd understand. Hell, you'd probably be proud of me for finally doing something that matters again. He took the photo, tucking it carefully into his jacket. Then he grabbed the old cigar box from behind the books, the one with Martha's jewelry and their important papers. If he was leaving, he might not be coming back. Sarah was waiting in the cellar, dressed in dark clothes, her few possessions in a backpack. Are you sure about this? She asked one more time. No, Luke admitted, but I'm sure about staying here even less. Marcus was right about one thing. I could smell your perfume too. Lilacs. If I noticed, others will too. And next time they come, they'll bring dogs. They waited until full dark, then made their way to the truck. Luke had disabled the automatic lights, and they loaded up in darkness. As they pulled out, taking the back road that led through the woods rather than the main drive, Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand. Thank you, she said. I know I keep saying it, but save it, Luke said, not unkindly. We're not out of this yet. Not by a long shot. As they drove through the darkness, Luke caught a glimpse of movement in his rearview mirror. Lights following at a distance. His hands tightened on the wheel. Company, he said quietly. Sarah turned to look. How do they? Doesn't matter. Hold on. Luke had lived in these hills all his life. He knew every back road, every deer trail, and every shortcut. He killed the headlights, relying on memory and moonlight, and turned sharply onto a logging road that most people didn't even know existed. The truck bounced and lurched over the rough terrain, branches scraping against the sides. Behind them, the lights hesitated, then followed. But there were city cars not built for this kind of driving. Luke pushed harder, the truck's four-wheel drive eating up the terrain. They burst out onto another back road, fishtailing slightly as Luke cranked the wheel. He flipped the lights back on and floored it, putting distance between them and their pursuers. There's a river crossing about 5 miles ahead, he said. Old bridge, weight limit. Those SUVs won't risk it. If we cross there, we can lose them. Sarah gripped the door handle as they flew through the darkness. And if the bridge doesn't hold us? Then we swim, Luke said grimly. The bridge, when they reached it, looked even worse than Luke remembered. Wooden planks, rusted supports, and a sign that said condemned in large letters. He didn't hesitate, just downshifted and rolled onto it. The wood groaned and cracked under their weight. Halfway across, a plank gave way entirely, and the truck lurched sickeningly. But Luke kept steady, and they made it to the other side, just as headlights appeared behind them. The SUVs stopped at the bridge, unwilling or unable to follow. Luke didn't slow down, taking turn after turn until he was sure they'd lost them. Finally, hours later, they stopped at a rundown motel that took cash and didn't ask questions. Luke got them a room in the back, parking the truck out of sight. Inside, Sarah collapsed on one of the beds, shaking. "They're not going to stop," she said. "Marcus won't stop. And my father. God, what if he's already dead?" "Then we make sure his story gets told," Luke said firmly. "That FBI friend of yours keeps trying. And tomorrow, we find that cabin. One step at a time." Sarah nodded, then looked at him with something like wonder. "Why does this not faze you? You just gave up everything, and you're acting like it's just another day." Luke sat on the other bed, suddenly feeling every one of his 52 years. "When Martha was sick, I learned something. Life can change in an instant. Everything you thought was permanent is gone. You can either break, or you can adapt. I spent 5 years being broken. Maybe it's time to try the other way." As exhaustion finally overtook them, Luke lay in the darkness, listening to Sarah's breathing even out into sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers. The Castellanes wouldn't give up easily, and they were playing on the enemy's field now. But for tonight, they were alive and free. In a world where powerful men could make people disappear, where justice could be bought and sold, sometimes that was victory enough. The hunt would continue come dawn. But for now, the prey had escaped. And Luke Harper, farmer and widower, had remembered what it felt like to fight for something that mattered. The truth underground. The cabin existed. After 2 days of careful travel, switching vehicles twice and doubling back more times than Luke could count, they found it nestled in a hollow deep in the Ozark Mountains. It was smaller than Luke had expected, more a reinforced shack than a proper cabin, but it was well hidden and surprisingly well stocked. He really was paranoid, Sarah said softly, running her hand over canned goods that couldn't be more than a year old. But prepared. The cabin had solar panels, a water filtration system, and a ham radio setup that looked professionally installed. But it was what they found in the locked trunk under the floorboards that changed everything. Jesus, Luke breathed, staring at the contents. Files, hundreds of them. Photos, documents, and recorded conversations on old cassette tapes. And at the center of it all, a leather journal in what Sarah recognized as her father's handwriting. "This is it," Sarah whispered, picking up the journal with trembling hands. This is what he was working on. They spent hours going through the material. What emerged was a picture far darker than even Sarah had imagined. The Castellanes weren't just involved in human trafficking. They were running one of the largest operations in the country, using their legitimate businesses as cover. Judges, politicians, police commissioners. The corruption went all the way up. "Look at this," Luke said, holding up a photograph. It showed Marcus Castellane at what appeared to be a warehouse, shaking hands with a man Luke recognized from the news, a cartel leader who was supposedly untouchable. The date on the back is 3 months ago. Sarah was reading her father's journal, tears streaming down her face. He knew they were onto him. He writes about it here. He was going to take everything to a friend at the Washington Post, but she looked up. They took him a night before he was supposed to leave. He must have come here first and hidden all this. "Smart man," Luke said. "But Sarah, this stuff is enough to bring them all down. We need to get it to someone who can use it." "Jack," Sarah said immediately. "My FBI contact. If I can reach him." The ham radio crackled to life, making them both jump. A voice, distorted but clear, came through the static. "Sarah Chun, we know you're listening." Sarah's face went white. Luke moved to turn off the radio, but she stopped him. "I need to hear," she said. "Your father wants to talk to you," the voice continued. "It was Marcus. He's quite eager to see you. He keeps asking about his little girl." Another voice came on, weak and raspy, but unmistakable. "Sarah, baby, don't come. Don't let them." The sound of a blow cut him off, followed by a cry of pain that made Sarah sob. Marcus's voice returned. "He's lost weight, refuses to eat most days. Stubborn, like his daughter. But everyone breaks eventually, Sarah. Everyone has a limit. How much more can he take, do you think? How much more can you let him take?" Bastard, Luke growled. Here's my offer, Marcus continued. You come back. Alone. We'll have our wedding as planned. A beautiful ceremony, just family and close friends. And your father goes free. He can't even keep his mouth shut about his wild conspiracy theories. Everyone wins. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, well, your father's health is already so fragile. Accidents happen in custody. Heart attacks. Strokes. So many possibilities. The radio went dead. Sarah stared at it. Her father's journal clutched to her chest. He's alive, she whispered. Oh God, he's alive, and they're torturing him because of me. Because of them, Luke corrected firmly. This isn't your fault. None of it. I have to go back. Like hell. Luke's voice was harder than she'd ever heard it. You go back, you're dead. Maybe not right away, but eventually. And your father too. You think Marcus Castellane is going to let either of you live knowing what you know? Then what do I do? Sarah cried. Let them kill him? Listen to them torture him. Luke was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he picked up the satellite phone they'd found with the supplies. We're going to call your FBI friend. But not just him. We're going to call everyone. Every news outlet, every law enforcement agency that isn't in their pocket. We're going to make so much noise that killing you or your father becomes impossible. They'll deny everything. Say the evidence is fake. Maybe, but it'll be out there. And men like Marcus, they survive in shadows. Drag them into the light. Luke shrugged. Besides, we've got something they don't know about. What? Luke smiled grimly and pulled out a small device from his pocket. I haven't just been a farmer these past 5 years. Martha's nephew, Tommy, is in cybersecurity. Tell me a few things. I've been recording everything since that first night. Every threat, every visit. Got Marcus admitting to holding your father and threatening torture. It's all here. Sarah stared at him. You've been recording? This whole time? Insurance, Luke said. I learned a long time ago that when you're dealing with powerful people, you need leverage. This, plus your father's evidence, that's a lot of leverage. They worked through the night, scanning documents, uploading files to secure cloud servers, and preparing packages to send to journalists and law enforcement agencies. Sarah finally reached Jack Sullivan, her FBI contact, who turned out to be in deeper than they'd imagined. Sarah, thank God. Jack's voice crackled over the encrypted line. I've been underground trying to build a case against the Castellanes. Your father was my informant. When he disappeared, I've been trying to find him for months. We have his evidence, Sarah said. All of it, and more. Send me everything. I've got a team ready to move, but we needed proof. This could be it. As dawn broke over the mountains, they put their plan in motion. Files went to journalists at the New York Times, Washington Post, and a dozen other outlets. Videos were uploaded to secure servers with dead man switches. If anything happened to Sarah or Luke, everything would go public automatically. But Marcus had one more card to play. The attack came just as they were preparing to leave the cabin. Professional, military-trained men who moved like ghosts through the forest. Luke saw them coming on the security cameras he'd found and activated, giving them minutes to prepare. Out the back, he ordered, grabbing the shotgun and the bag with the original evidence. Take the ATV and get to the ranger station. It's 10 miles north. Don't stop for anything. What about you? I'll buy you time. Luke checked his ammunition. Go, Luke. He turned to her, and for a moment, his gruff exterior cracked. You remind me of her, you know, Martha. That same stubborn courage. She'd be proud of what you're doing. Now, go make it count. Sarah kissed his cheek, then ran. Luke Harper made his stand in that cabin, using every trick he'd learned from a lifetime of hunting and his newfound knowledge of security systems. He held them off for almost an hour, long enough for Sarah to reach safety and for the uploaded files to propagate across the internet. When they finally took him down, he was smiling. Sarah made it to the ranger station, where Jack Sullivan and a team of federal agents were waiting. The story broke worldwide within hours. The evidence was overwhelming, the recordings damning. Marcus Castellane was arrested at his country club, dragged away in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. But the real victory came 3 days later, when Sarah was reunited with her father in a secure hospital facility. David Chun was thin, bruised, but alive. The first thing he did was ask about Luke Harper. Sarah had to tell him the truth, that Luke had died protecting her, protecting the truth. David Chun, an investigative journalist who'd seen it all, wept for a man he'd never met. "He saved us all," David said finally. "He and my brave daughter." The trials took 2 years. The Castellane empire crumbled, taking dozens of corrupt officials with it. Sarah testified, her voice steady and clear, telling the world about a farmer who'd chosen justice over safety, who'd given everything to protect a stranger. She kept Martha's photo, the one Luke had taken from his mantle. It sat on her desk at the FBI Academy, where she was training to become an agent. Jack Sullivan had recruited her personally, saying she had the instincts for it. On the anniversary of Luke's death, Sarah drove back to Tennessee. The farm had been bought by the Hendersons, who promised to take care of it. She stood in the barn where it all began, remembering a blood-soaked wedding dress and a kind man who'd offered her hope. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty space, "for seeing me, for believing me, for everything." The wind rustled through the hay, and for just a moment, Sarah could swear she smelled lilacs. But that was impossible. She didn't wear that perfume anymore. As she walked back to her car, she noticed new flowers planted by the barn entrance. "Lilacs." Mrs. Henderson waved from the porch, a knowing smile on her face. Some ghosts, Sarah realized, were worth keeping. The Castellanes were gone, their network dismantled, their victims freed. It had cost Luke Harper his life, but he told her once that he'd been dead for 5 years anyway. In those final days, he'd lived more than he had since Martha's passing. Sarah Chun went on to become one of the FBI's most decorated agents, specializing in human trafficking cases. She named her son Luke and told him stories about the farmer who taught her that sometimes one person standing up to evil was enough to change everything. The bride who'd walked into his barn covered in blood had walked out a different person. And Luke Harper, who'd wanted nothing more than quiet solitude, had found his purpose in the chaos. In the end, that was the truth that mattered most. Not the files, or the evidence, or even the convictions, but the simple fact that when faced with a choice between comfort and conscience, a grieving farmer had chosen to fight, and won.